see. Good to know. But you've had a chance to walk around and see it's a really beautiful city with a lot of amazing things going on. And when we chose Spokane back in 2019, actually 2018, because we were planning several years ahead, trying to do our due diligence and get organized. At the time, they were just starting to build some really amazing sport facilities here. So we'll get a chance to tour some of those this evening. And there's a lot of amazing sport, both indoor and outdoor activities. This is host to one of the largest basketball tournaments in the world, I believe is the way they bill it, with the Hoop Fest. And you'll see this stuff setting up around town for that. There's two amazing stadium facilities literally right across the street, with a third one being built for a minor league soccer team. There's also the minor league hockey and a lot of other amazing things. And then if anybody's an outdoor person, the gravel riding, the running, all kinds of amazing things. And even if you're not so adventurous, there's a really cool gondola that goes over the waterfall dam thing that's just about 10 minutes walk from here. So, and if you haven't seen it yet, there's the coolest skate park thing that you can just use your skates, your rollerblades or your inline skates to skate around. And in the winter, you can ice skate on it. And I was like, I want one of those at home. So that's my project when I get home, to figure out how to build that. So there's a lot of stuff to do, but hopefully the program's also exciting enough that you're going to stay inside with us and partake in a lot of the things that are going on here. We're a small group this year. A lot of factors really impacted travel. And so I am really excited for those of you who were able to come and join us, and for the conversations, small but mighty. And we're going to be really striving to try to engage in a lot of critical conversations. I really encourage you over the next couple of days to get together with peers. We've got some space in the program, but there's plenty of space outside the program to have critical conversations, to talk about the things that we collectively need to be working on to enhance and improve sports systems, to support our coaches and better quality coaching, to ultimately support our athletes. And we really are looking for collaboration with individuals and organizations and groups to do that. And so as you guys are talking and collaborating, if you come up with things that you think need to be worked on as groups, or that we need to collaborate on, we are going to be reiterating that message over and over again. Cam was supposed to be doing it with me, so there'd be two voices yelling about this, but now I'm going to do it for both of us. But we're really looking to create those kinds of opportunities and partnerships. So share those kinds of things with us. Today at 1:15 after the keynote, we've got our first collaboration conversation, which is, again, designed to be a talking conversation. So it's either that or some of the sessions. And then at 2:15, we'll be having more collaborative conversations opportunities, where if you've got something you want to talk to peers about, you'll be able to come in and put a table tent down and have chats. And then we'll be posting some stuff to do some more of that tomorrow and on Friday. So we're really looking forward to that. A few things as we get going here that I want to bring to the table before we really kick off. First and foremost, masks. If anyone feels comfortable, if you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to wear a mask. We do have them out for you on the desk out in front of the registration. It's not required in the hotel or in the state, but we understand that people have different and unique circumstances. So please consider that. If you're having any trouble with the Whova app, I apologize. Please don't look at me. I can't fix it. However, we have an amazing intern, Nancy, who's sitting at the back with her Apple computer, who set me up last night and got mine fixed. So she's really good at this and is doing a lot of work behind the scenes. So anything that's technologically sound, please give a shout out to Nancy. She's doing a great job. And then bathrooms are right across the hall, right out that way. Behind, this is the most important thing, on the back of your badge, you should all have an orange drink ticket. That's for tonight at the dessert reception. After dinner, we'll come back here for a dessert reception. But probably the most important things is to expressing our gratitude, the gratitude for everybody being here, the gratitude for the opportunity to be together. And we also would like to, in the spirit of being in the Pacific Northwest, talk a little bit further about our gratitude for being able to be in this place. And so for that, I'm going to call up Kara. And now you messed me up by telling me how to rhyme your name. So apparently it rhymes with mozzarella. Now I'm going to get it wrong. Cocarella. There's see, I told you, you couldn't rhyme it for me. That was going to mess me up. Come on up and we have a special statement we'd like to read. So you shouldn't have done that.
Hello, everyone. So we want to start this summit with a land and labor acknowledgement. And A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and values the past, present, and future legacies of Indigenous peoples on the lands which we inhabit. It honors their lives as stewards and inhabitants of what is a now colonized land. A labor acknowledgement is a statement that recognizes that much of the economic progress and development in a geographic area or industry resulted from the unpaid labor and forced servitude of BIPOC people, specifically enslaved African labor. While many of us are currently gathered on the traditional and sacred lands of the Spokane tribe, we encourage everyone to recognize the ancestral lands and the unpaid labor that allowed for economic growth where you live and work. So this is our land and labor acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that this year's USCCE Summit is located on the ancestral lands of the Spokane tribe. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We pay respects to the Indigenous elders, past and present, as we respectfully consider the many legacies of violence, erasure, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. We also acknowledge that our nation has benefited and profited from the free enslaved labor of Black people. We honor the legacy of the African diaspora and Black life and the knowledge, skills, and human spirit that persevere in spite of violence and white supremacy. And you should see this, you'll see this land and labor acknowledgement statement on the slides that I believe will be rolling here in a little bit. At the USCCE, our goal is to go beyond just reading this statement and to consistently engage in anti-racist and inclusive practices. And with that spirit in mind, as we continue to strive to continuously grow and improve, we want to welcome everyone to the 2022 USCCE Coach Development Summit.
And I would like to acknowledge Kara and Leslie for, it was something I wasn't familiar with and I hadn't seen done before. And when they brought it up and shared with me the idea, I was really excited for the opportunity to make that part of how we're embracing working as an organization and how we're embracing living the messages we want to try to bring into the work that we do. And with that in mind, as we were planning the summit and thinking through some of the different things we wanted to do, one of the things we were really excited and about having an opportunity to do was an opportunity to help share and stretch how we are doing things as professionals in the work that we do. And with that in mind, we've been looking at a lot of different options and we became acquainted with our first keynote speaker, who I'm really excited to bring up to the podium. Although he knows he's not limited to the podium, he can go anywhere he wants. That's why the stairs are on this side, so nobody jumps off my podium. It's a rule. But we're really excited to have Kaig Lightner come and speak. And we had an opportunity to talk several times before the summit. And I just think there's a great opportunity here for us to continue to grow as he speaks to us about play equity and some of the really important topics. And I'm going to let him tell you a lot more about his journey and why he's here and the message that he's bringing for us to consider and embrace. So thank you. Welcome.
Maybe there's a slide up there. I could do the presentation without slides, but it won't be as exciting or fun. You all can probably hear me because I have a coach voice, but I will turn that on. That's better. I don't have to shout. It's nice to see all of you. I've got some things to say before that comes on. So first of all, happy Pride Month. It is June, it is Pride Month, and I love to start out by saying hello to all my LGBTQ plus family that's out there here in the room and out there in the virtual space watching. We're always out there. We always have been. We always will be. So I always love to say hello to you. So glad you're here. Oh. Somewhere on there is my presentation. I had to tell you that this morning I was just kind of relaxing in my hotel room for a little bit, and I came across a college hockey game. And like any good coach and athlete, I was like, this is great. This is relaxing. I get to watch some sports. And I am always so impressed with hockey because one, I am not a hockey player. I am not a skater. I'm the person along the wall like this skating. So I'm always impressed with the athleticism. I'm impressed with the intensity of that sport and the athleticism that those athletes have. And so I was just really excited to get to watch some hockey. Did I mention it was women's college hockey? If you made a default assumption that I was talking about men's college hockey, just put a pin in that assumption for our conversation today around play equity. Oh, there they are. Excellent. Good to see that this slides are up. I'm also really excited to be here to talk to all of you because you're all in this industry that I love, which is coaching. And I have been coaching since I was 15 years old, which is over 25 years ago. And it's a really quick, great story that's a pivotal moment of my life. And I was a part of the Skyhawks soccer camps. Who did Skyhawks camps as a kid? Nobody? I'm the only one? Oh my gosh, they were amazing. I loved them. I was obsessed with them. It was where I got to find my love of soccer for the most part. And at the age of like 14 or 15, you age out, you can't go back anymore. I was devastated. I wanted to be a part of them. And so my mom, who is a person who does not take no for an answer and always finds a solution, went to the camp director and said, you need to hire my daughter. I was her daughter at that time. You need to hire my daughter as a junior coach. And the camp director said, we don't have junior coaches. That's not a thing. We're not going to hire your kid. And she just said, you won't be disappointed. You got to hire this person. They're going to do a great job for you. Well, somehow that person was convinced and I got to be a junior coach right out of the gate. They threw me in with a coach who was a basketball coach because he was filling in for a soccer camp. He knew nothing about soccer. And so at 15 years old, I got thrown into the wolves with like 7-year-olds and just ran with it, ran all the games, had a great time, and just fell in love with this game and with coaching and the world of coaching and the magic of it. And I knew at that moment that I had to make this my life, that I had to be in the world of coaching for the rest of my life somehow. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been coaching soccer since that time, nearly endlessly, until I started this nonprofit soccer club that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. I just had to stop coaching this last year because I now am running Portland Community Football Club, and I'm the executive director. And so I've got some executive director things to do. Can I ask the tech folks in the back, is there any way you can make that bigger? So we just get rid of, yeah, there we go. Thanks. So Portland Community Football Club, I just want to tell you about this because it's the other thing that I do besides the consulting work that I do with Quantum Gender. And it is a really unique soccer club. And it is a soccer club I started in 2013 because I saw a need for a different kind of soccer club in the competitive pay-to-play space. It was an idea that I had to make soccer affordable, accessible for the communities that are left out, low-income communities, immigrant, refugee, LGBTQ communities, because the pay-to-play space in soccer is so expensive and it's so exclusive. I wanted to do something different. And so I started this club in 2013, and our idea is to bring everything to the kids that they need to play soccer at the highest level that they want to. And then of course, when COVID hit, we shut down for 9 months and we stopped playing soccer. Well, we didn't just shut down entirely, we pivoted and we started doing food boxes for families. We started doing zero interest microloans. We started wrapping services around families because we recognized that we had the connection there. We had the relationship built with them and we could offer that support. And then now as we're back to playing soccer again, now we've built this into our full-time family services program that we're developing this year, offering food to the families, food on the field, social service support, social service referrals for players. And we are trying to change the landscape of the pay-to-play system. So I bring that to you, one, because I love to tell people about it, who we are, what we do. There's flyers out on the resource tables if you want to keep up with us and be a part of us in any way. And two, you're going to hear more about this at the end of my talk today about how we've created gender inclusive teams within this club as well, and how we're really trying to elevate this idea of play equity that we're going to talk about today. So I'd like to start with that and give you a sense of what we do there. So before I get into the, Is that going to go forward for me? Yes. Did I do that? Did you do that? Okay. Before I get into the presentation today, I also just want to set the framework for what this is going to be today. And the framework being that I'm not a researcher. I'm not going to talk about data. I'm not going to talk about research around the ideas of inclusion and transgender inclusion. I'm really here as somebody who likes to push different thoughts and different ideas. I studied philosophy as an undergrad at University of Washington. I got a master's in social work at Portland State University, and I'm a coach. So these are the things that I bring to the table when talking about different ways of thinking about gender, how gender interacts within the sports world. And my goal today is to really, hopefully, have you leave this room with more questions, more thoughts, more wonderings, maybe some big pushbacks. And that's what the goal is for the talk today. And so I like to set that standard so that hopefully you're thinking about lots of questions and getting into that mind space of expansiveness. I'm also really honing in on youth and team sports because that's my world. I know you all are in different kinds of industry within the coaching, athletics, college, professionals, team sports, individual sports. I'm going to talk about how it looks in team sports and with youth particularly, but hopefully it's applicable to what you're doing as well. And then finally, the last thing around framework that I want to just set out is that I'm going to tell you personal stories about myself today as a trans person, as a queer person. They're my stories. It's my journey. It's the things that I've gone through. It's not representative of an entire community, an entire LGBTQ plus community. That might seem obvious, but it's really important that I say that because I've gone through trauma. I've experienced discrimination. I've experienced harassment. I've experienced oppression. And I've had a chance to heal from that trauma. I've had a chance to get on the other side of it, partially because of my family and because they're such supportive, loving people, and partially because of sports. And those two things together allowed me to move through a lot of trauma and get to a place where I can stand up in front of all of you, share stories about myself, be vulnerable, and not re-trigger anxiety and trauma within my body. That's not the case for all people in my community. And so you don't often find people are comfortable standing up and being a public speaker on this. And so I often get the category of like, oh, you are the trans person that we're going to hear from. Well, I'm one trans person you're going to hear from. I encourage you to seek out other people's stories. There's lots of people talking about their stories on social media these days. I encourage you to find other people's journeys and other people's stories and not just mine. So that's where we're going to start. That's how I like to start off with the conversation today. And I wanted first, before we get into what is play equity and what are we talking about this big concept, I just want to talk about gender and sports to get us going, because this is where we really need to start from. And this idea of how gender and sports interact with one another. And we're going to really actually start with a little bit of gender through the ages. This clicker is slow. There we go. So gender and sports through the ages. So we're going to hit a few kind of big different historical points. And we're going to start in 1997 when I was 17 years old. And we're starting here because I've got a pretty influential story to share with you that I think is a big part of why I am so passionate about this topic of equity in sports. And so I just want to set the scene for you. You can imagine that quintessential picture of a high school soccer game. It's nighttime, the lights are up. It's that like crisp fall air. There's like this electricity in the air. I think everyone in this room probably can get into that space. It's pretty easy for all of you to experience that moment. It was so exhilarating for me as a young athlete, right? That moment you got to step onto the field. And so I'm out at my soccer game, playing for varsity. I've worked my ass off. I swear a little bit, sorry. I worked my ass off to get to varsity. And so I'm really focused on the game that night. And I'm down on the track, in front of the stadium. There's like 300 people there. I went to a pretty big high school. So there's like 300 folks in the stands, faculty, parents, players, teammates, classmates. And I'm down there warming up, very focused. I am laser focused on what's going on. I was and still am a very intense competitor. When something is set in front of me to compete, I go for it. My partner has tried to get me to play cooperative games. I'm like, I don't know who wins. I need to know who wins. So I'm warming up and getting ready to go into the game. And I get the nod from my coach to, okay, good, go stand at half line and wait to get let in. And as I'm running onto the field, I hear, as if every other sound in the stadium has ceased to exist, I hear somebody say, "They're putting the boy in." And I continue to run onto the field. I'm not going to stop and do something. And so I keep running out on the field, and it's as if every feeling of shame and embarrassment has just washed over me. Now, I was used to feeling shame and embarrassment. Shame and embarrassment was something that I felt hundreds of times a day off the field. It was when I was being, asked if I was a boy or a girl, snickered at, when I walk into the girls' restroom or locker room, told I was in the wrong bathroom. I got a lot of bullying and a lot of teasing, and that it resulted in feeling a lot of shame and embarrassment for myself. But shame and embarrassment on the soccer field or on the sports field was not something that I always felt, right? It wasn't always there for me. It was a place that I actually got to escape it and get away from it. But here it was, it crashed down on me in front of everybody. This entire stadium is looking at me. And so what do? Well, I cope with it the best way that I can. I cope with it through my athleticism, through being, focusing on the game and knowing that I got to just go for the win. I got to do everything that I can and really focus in on myself and being an athlete and dropping some defenders on their asses. That was what I wanted to do. And that's what my focus was for that game. But all of these thoughts of shame and embarrassment are swirling around me. And it was as if I was in a bad nightmare. And a nightmare where your clothes are stripped off of you and you're standing naked in front of 300 people underneath the bright lights. That's how it felt for me in that moment. And there was no way I was going to wake up from it, right? There's no waking up from this nightmare. So I just coped the best way that I knew how. I finished the game. I did what I could. But let's just unpack this for just 1 second. I want you to just focus on these pictures. Just look at me at this age of 17. I've got long hair. I'm playing on the girls' team. I use she and her pronouns. All of those things indicate that I was a girl. Why was somebody calling me a boy? Put aside for the fact that inside for myself, I did not feel like a girl. I'm just talking about what's being expressed out into the world. And so this comment about me being a boy was not necessarily based on my appearance, but it was based on how I played the sport. I was aggressive. I was intense. I was ultra competitive. And sometimes I was like that even towards my own teammates. I had been dedicating my life to 4 sports because it was saving my life. This was how I found my sanctity. This is how I found my ability to continue on, was by dedicating and being this intense competitor. I knew no other way. And so I was often labeled as cocky, arrogant, played too rough, right? These were all labels that came to me because of the way I played sports and because I looked like a girl. Now imagine if I had been assigned the sex of male at birth and I grew up as a boy and I still played like that. And I still had all of those ways of being intense and competitive. Maybe I still would have been labeled as cocky and arrogant, but coaches would have been throwing me a party. Because we celebrate when men and boys are competitive, intense, and aggressive. And we shame women often and girls when they express those same things. I don't think this double standard is new to anyone in this room. And I would guess that most people in this room don't like that that's a double standard. They don't appreciate the fact that that is how it can be. But a lot of us, including me for a long time, just chalked it up to this is how sports are. This is what we got. We've got this gendered system. Girls play like this, boys play like this. This is how it is. But I am somebody who really likes to ask why a lot. I really like to push and find out why Why is this an aspect of athletics? Why is masculinity the bedrock of athletics? Why is it the bedrock from which all athletic talents, that's still on, all athletic talents and qualities are demonstrated? Thank you, Cara. Get that out of here. There we go. Why is it the thing that we measure it from, right? Why is that the bedrock? So we have to go back a little bit further than 1997 to answer some of these questions. We're going to go to 400 BC. And we're going to talk about a story of this amazing woman named Calipatira. Who has heard of Calipatira? Is this name familiar to any of you? That's okay. It was a new name to me not that long ago. She was part of an Olympic legacy family. Her husband was an Olympic athlete. Her son is an Olympic athlete. She was part of this legacy. And unfortunately, her husband died, and she took over the training of her son in the sport of boxing. And at that time, and for a long time, married women were not allowed into the Olympic Stadium. And the reason they were not allowed into the Olympic Stadium is that it was assumed that the pain of death was too great of a toll for women to take to be into that stadium. So she wasn't allowed in as the trainer. Well, she disguised herself as a man, said, I'm going in, this is my son, went into the stadium. He won the boxing match. You can see him celebrating. And she runs in just to celebrate with him, and something happens with her clothing and a breast is exposed. Well, she's found out that she's not a man and that she's not supposed to be there. And this was supposed to be punishable by death. If a woman was caught in the stadium, it was a death sentence. She pleaded to the authorities saying, this legacy of my family, I'm just here to try to push it forward. This is what I'm trying to do here. Can you please just make an exception? They made an exception because of her family legacy. But from then on, trainers were required to strip naked when they came into the stadium because of this one moment, this one time. Now we've got people needing to strip naked. Also, Olympic athletes performed naked at this time. So just keep that in mind. So I go all the way back to this time because this is foundational. This is the beginning of athletics in our human history. This is where things were starting to be built from. And who is setting the standards? Men. Cisgender men. Now, cisgender, I just want to make sure everybody knows, cisgender is when somebody's sex that they're assigned at birth, let's say female, matches and corresponds with how their gender feels to them inside. So they feel connected to being a woman, they feel connected to all those things about that. That's a cisgender person. So cisgender men creating this, athletics that are built for cisgender men and are performed by cisgender men at this time. So let's fast forward just a little bit to the modern Olympics. We're going to stay with the Olympics for a bit here because it's so important. Fast forward to the modern Olympics, and you've got the founder of the modern Olympics saying this: competition should be the solemn and periodic exaltation of male athleticism with female applause as its reward. This is the foundation. Now, I want to be really clear that I don't bring these things up as like I'm standing up here like, I hate men, right? That often can be the thing that comes through here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm bringing to you some facts and some data of where foundation started for how we started to think about athleticism. And it started with masculinity. So let's stick with the Olympics for just 1 second. And we're going to talk about Stella Walsh. Stella Walsh competed in the 1936 Olympics. And there was one of the most anticipated races in this time of the 1936 Olympics between Helen the Fulton Flash from the US and Stella Walsh, who was running for Poland, but she was actually Polish American, but she was running for Poland. Both of these women had their sex questioned because they were really good, they were incredibly fast, and their masculine appearance. So their sex was questioned, they had to take tests, they had to strip naked. There was all sorts of reasons that they were already questioned as women at that time. And Walsh, Stella Walsh, was also believed to be hiding something because she asked for privacy in the locker room for changing. And so she got the terrible, awful, derogatory nickname of Stella the Fella. And she was considered one of the most accomplished female athletes at the time. She held multiple world records, an incredible athlete, setting records in track and field that some of them lasted for 50 years. She was an absolute incredible athlete. And instead of me trying to describe, I actually found a little newsreel from the 1930s. See if it'll play. You might need to be.
This is Charles Eade.
You'll get to see Stella Walsh. Will you just turn the volume up just a little bit on that yellow button, or that yellow box?
Fans. This week, you meet two of the world's greatest women athletes, Miss Walsh on your left and Miss Weiss, both from Poland. Miss Weiss holds the world record for putting the shot. Here she is doing her stuff. And again in slow motion. She throws the shot about 40 feet, remarkable for a girl of 21. Now watch Miss Weiss throw the discus. She has broken the world's record 3 times this year, and her best throw is nearly 145 feet. Poland is proud of her and sent her to America for the Olympic Games. Now for Miss Walsh, perhaps the most amazing woman athlete in the world. Here she is throwing a javelin, just one of her many athletic achievements. She has won 9 out of 11 events at the Polish Championships. She has a race with a man opponent. There's perfect action for you. Man is always chasing woman, but in this case, doesn't stand a chance. Study the start this way, and you get a good idea of her style. Now she is traveling at top speed, but slowed down by the slow motion camera, and still being chased by that man. A real race against other first-rate women runners, but she beats them all easily. By the way, in case you're interested, she is a vegetarian. Maybe that helps.
Forward. There we go. Okay, back to Stella. That reel is just great. I've watched it 100 million times at this point. I just love it. I just love the cadence of that person's voice and the fact that it ends on being a vegetarian. So really sadly, Stella Walsh was killed in 1980. She was being robbed at gunpoint. She tried to wrestle the gun away from the man who was robbing her, and she was shot. What resulted in that was an autopsy. And from that autopsy, they discovered that Stella had a really rare chromosome condition called mosaicism. And mosaicism is a combination of XO and XY chromosomes. And so what ended up happening was that this was then publicized in a really terrible, awful way. And the way it was publicized was that Stella Walsh has a penis and that Stella Walsh is a man. When actually Stella had ambiguous genitalia. She had genitalia that could be neither defined as male nor female and would be somebody who would be called intersex. And intersex is a really common experience and identity within this country. More common than people realize. So look it up, intersex, if you're curious about it. And so this got blasted out to her local community in Cleveland, and people started calling for rescinding of her athletic and her Olympic gold medals and her Olympic medals and all of her accomplishments because of this, because they're saying she's not a woman. She can't be given these accolades as a woman. Look she's not a woman. At the same time, however, I think it's really encouraging. The Polish American community within Cleveland where she lived was rallying for her to continue to keep these Olympic medals. So her story is amazing. There's more to it, but I just wanted to bring it to highlight here. So let's just recap for a minute. I was publicly shamed as a girl because I played like a boy. A woman in 400 BC was narrowly escaped death because she was disguising as a man to try to be a part of the athletic training. And an incredible Olympic athlete, her accomplishments are questioned because her physical appearance is not feminine enough. What is the common denominator amongst all of these, amongst all 3 of these stories? What's the thing that goes through the through line? We are all pushing back against this binary system, this gender binary system. We're all 3 of us push back against these rules, these supposed rules, in quotes, of the gender binary system. This is the system that our society heavily relies upon. It is embedded into nearly everything that is existent in our society, whether we know it or not, whether we pay attention to it or not. It is embedded into our subconscious. I guarantee you that when you were looking at pictures of Stella, you were looking at pictures of me, it was there. It was influencing how you were categorizing how we look and all the things that follow it. And so this system is basically saying that there's this assumption that there's only two socially acceptable gender identities, male and female, and then there's these corresponding gender role expectations and sexual orientation that kind of cascade down from it. So what does this actually mean? This means that a doctor, says, congratulations, you're having a boy. First of all, that's problematic because you're actually just having a human who has testosterone and a penis. The boy part hasn't been figured out yet. That's gender, right? Sex and gender, two separate things. But the doctor says you're having a boy, and the expectation from our society based on this system is that the boy will grow up to be a man, will have masculine attributes, social attributes that are masculinity, identify as a man, and the default is that he will be heterosexual. Now, we know not everybody's heterosexual, but our society still defaults to that's the norm. And everything that falls outside of that is not the norm. And then our society is churning this out and continuing this system to go along because of the rules. And the rules are, if I can get this to go, I know you can't read that because my thing is in the way, but the rules are you must choose a side. The sex you're assigned at birth determines which side you land on. And then at cisgender and passing men, I would be considered a passing man because I can move through the world and no one detects that I'm transgender. No one thinks anything differently of me than I'm just a man. We experience privilege. So those are the rules that are keeping this system continuing on. I am standing here in the flesh in front of you to tell you that first and second rule do not apply. They are not set in stone. I didn't have to choose a side. It wasn't easy, but I chose to be me. And my sex assigned at birth, sure, put me on the female side, but that's not what worked for me. These rules are not set in stone. But we have to push back against them. And we especially have to push back against them in this industry, in the sports industry. Now, when you as a person, as a human, try to go between these two, move across them, stay in the middle, you get burned. That's what that fire represents. It's a societal burn. And for transgender people, non-binary people, queer people, genderqueer people, that societal burn is harassment, violence, discrimination, death. But here's the thing that we don't talk about enough. This system is not working for everybody. This system is not working for cisgender people, no matter their sexual orientation, because there is a societal burn that is happening for everyone. For example, think about the societal response when a woman doesn't follow the norms of femininity, speaks her mind loudly, boldly, stands up against male dominance, pushes back, particularly if she's not white, particularly for women of color. Think about the societal harm and burn that person experiences. She can be labeled as harsh, domineering, way too intense, not a team player. These are all just the PG words that I will use in this setting. And then think about how that ripples out. In the professional world, maybe she's not invited to the company happy hour. Maybe that means she misses out on a promotion. And in the sports world, often women who express these kinds of non-feminine characteristics are labeled a dyke or a lesbian, no matter what their sexual orientation is. Or she plays like a man. This is how sexism and misogyny show up in our society, and it is based in this system. And it is impacting everyone. It is not just impacting transgender people. And let's think about men. Men are impacted by this as well. Think about when a man expresses vulnerability, crying, emotion, any kind of affection with another man. The labels that come out against that man are he's weak, he's unmanly, he can be called a fag, straight out, right? Doesn't matter his sexual orientation. And all of those things show up exponentially in the athletic world for men because that backbone of sports is rooted in masculinity. And so if he's not upholding that masculinity, he's unmanly, he's weak. So the reality is very, very few people, I would argue no one, fits perfectly into this system. But the thing is that cisgender folks and people who just fit into this system closely enough aren't always given the opportunity to critically analyze their place in it. Because why would you? If it's not really significantly harming you, right, and you're not really in that space of maybe battling with your gender identity in a way like I did, well, it's not necessarily that you're gonna really analyze it and think about it and figure out, well, where do I fit in that? Do I not fit in that? Well, I'm actually gonna give you a little bit of a reflective exercise to do right now. I know this is not very Keynote-esque. I know Keynote people don't ask you to do things, but I like to do things differently. So I want you to get out something to write with. It can be on your phone. Just do it somewhere where you can write and have a reflective moment. And I want you to take literally 1 minute. Come on, little slide. I'm gonna give you there we go. I'm gonna give you 1 minute. I got my coach watch on, so I really can time you. And I want you to write down all the ways that you don't fit into this system. It could be ways that you don't even express to the world. It could be things that only you think about in your own mind. But just write down just the ways you don't fit into this system. All right, we're gonna give you 1 minute. Go for it. About 20 more seconds. Okay. So typically when I do this, it's in a workshop setting, and I usually ask people to share if they feel comfortable. I'm not going to ask you to do that here. This is a little bit of an intimidating setting, unless somebody is just absolutely raring to share. I will give you the space. Yeah, that's what I thought. But I would love to just get a little bit of audience participation, create a little bit of community around this. Just raise your hand if this is the first time that you've given some real significant thought to this kind of question of how I fit or don't fit into this system. Is this the first time for anyone to really give it some thought? Yeah, it's okay. I had somebody come up to me after I did this workshop quite a while ago, and she had a little bit of tears in her eyes, and she said, "This is the first time I've allowed myself to ever think about how I think of my gender. I've always just assumed it's not okay for me to think about it. I don't have space. I don't have permission to think about it." I thought that was so powerful because if we're really going to get to a place of inclusion in the sports world, we as educators, leaders, coaches, all of those titles, we have to understand what it means for us and how we find ourselves in this system and where we can push back and where we probably already do push back, but now we're really critically analyzing it. Okay. So now that we've got a little bit of our gender lenses on, I want to talk about what is play equity. Now that we've got kind of a framework to start from, and this framework of this is how sports has sort of been in our country, in our society. But before we talk about play equity, we have to talk about what is equity. And we have to talk about what is equity versus equality. Probably all of you have seen this image. This is pretty famous image at this point. It's had just a gajillion different iterations. It first started in 2012, and it's just had a lot of different ways that it's been iterated since then. And I came across a recent iteration that I really like, that I thought was relevant to today. And that is this iteration of, we're not just talking about, here's what equality looks like and here's what equity looks like and the differences between those. But then we're talking about this idea of liberation. And that fence that those people are trying to find a way to look over, that fence is representing systemic barriers. And if we could remove systemic barriers, then we could have liberation. Then we're not just trying to figure out, well, how many boxes does somebody need to stand on in order for them to be able to see over that barrier? Let's just try to figure out a way to remove that barrier altogether. And if we're thinking about athletics and athletes, what is the systemic barrier that's in our way? What is the fence that it's representing in our discussion today? It's the gender binary system. It is the systemic barrier that is preventing our athletics from being more inclusive, more open doors, finding for people of all genders to find places to fit for themselves that works for them and their athleticism. And so what I really like is the idea of, yes, let's move towards play equity, which is challenging. We got to push back on a lot of things, but can we ultimately move towards play liberation? Can we ultimately move towards a place where that systemic barrier is no longer there? And we get a chance to really see what athletes are made of. And so this idea of play equity is that we are focusing on athleticism, skill, drive, and the goals that athletes have before their gender. I want to be really clear. I am not advocating for no gendered teams. I am saying that we really can do a lot of work in this space by saying, what is the athletic ability of this young person? Where can we place them on a team that works for their development first? Not they're a girl, they're this age, they go on this team. That's what play equity is. But it requires us to push back against all of these norms and these rules that we've been integrated with through that gender binary system. And so 2 genders is never going to be enough. Because we've got teams that look like this, where we've got, kids, young athletes that are, they look like girls, they're on girls' teams. And then we've got teams that kids that look like boys, we've got boys' teams. But what about teams that look like this? This is PCFC, this is my club. These are our teams. We have completely gender inclusive teams. We do not have any gendered teams. We will at some point when we have enough kids of different age categories. I'm happy to have an all girls team, happy to have an all boys team. But the way that it has worked in our club is that we have had kids come in playing at a certain level at an age. We assess their level, we put them in a team together, and they're all playing together. From the youngest kids from 8, 9-year-olds up to high school age. Nobody's gotten hurt. Everybody's excelling. And we've got coaches and players saying things like this. Behind my little screen there, it says, gender inclusive teams enables female players to develop their skills at a level that is best for them, regardless of societal gender sports roles. This is one of our coaches. She's 17 years old. She's one of our most incredible coaches that we have at the club. This is her response to what it looks like to have a gender inclusive club to coach in. That's what she sees. This wasn't prompted. I didn't ask her, what do you think of our gender inclusive club? This was just what she thinks of our club, of being a part of our club. And then a player, also not prompted to talk about the gender inclusivity, says PCFC taught me that boys and girls, says girls under there, have different likes, but come together for one sport to share a game that makes you feel like family. This is one of our, middle school age kids, Stephanie, incredible athlete. Didn't start out as an incredible athlete, came in needing a lot of development, and she got that development through playing with kids of all genders. The other place that we've seen this show up is when we had an open trans person come to our club. We have an open transgender boy who's 13 years old. And when his mom contacted us at first, she contacted me directly and had a lot of questions. Are there gendered teams? Are there other out trans kids? Are there other out LGBTQ kids? And I said, we don't have any other out kids at the moment, but we don't have any gendered teams. And we're just going to place your son. So this was a kid who was assigned sex of female at birth and identifies as a boy. We're going to place your son on the team that works best for him, for his ability, his skill level, his athleticism, and we'll allow him to develop as it works. Well, it just happens that he'd been out of soccer for a while, needed some time to develop. We put him with some younger kids to start with, boys and girls, and he excelled. And now he's on the team that's his age group. He's playing on one of our top competitive teams, and he's doing great. But that's because we had the space for him to just come in and just be an athlete, just focus on his athletic ability, his ability to be a kid, and really focus on his skills and get better at soccer. And so that's where I kind of want to wrap up, is this idea around how do we get to play equity? And I see furrowed brows out there, and I hope that those furrowed brows are people being like, I want to know more. If you have questions, if this is challenging your brain, I am so happy for that. If it's challenging your soul, I'm so happy for that. Let's talk about it later. Let's be in those critical conversations, because what I'm presenting to you is not talked about enough, and it needs to be, and it's controversial. Okay, so I'm going to do my very best in this last section not to give you a playbook. You are not going to walk out of here and be like, I know exactly how to create play equity. This person, Cage, maybe his name's Kaig, told me how to do it, and we're going to make it happen. That's not what's going to happen today. What I'm hoping to give you is some more thoughts around some general steps. Yes? Yes, I just have to be patient. So these three things, this is how we're going to wrap it up. We're going to talk about skill assessment, not nuts and bolts, but just a little bit of conceptual. Okay, when we're assessing players, again, I'm talking about youth. Things get more complicated when we're talking about collegiate or pro. But when we're assessing levels of play, athleticism of players, we got to drop the gender qualifier. Something like this statement: she's really skilled for a girl of her age. Seems totally innocuous to say that. But what has just happened is that that statement has just already presupposed that, oh, she's a girl and we're surprised by her skill. Not, oh, she's actually a very skilled player for this age group. Maybe she needs to play up 2 years. Maybe she needs to play with a higher competitive team. That's what skill assessment should look like. We got to remove the gender qualifier. Same for boys. This kind of statement can be said all the time. Oh, he's not physical enough to play with the boys of his age. He's not strong enough, whatever it is, right? Fill in the blank. Again, it's a presupposition of, what does masculinity mean? What does it mean for this boy to compete with kids his age? And why aren't we just looking at, where is he at developmentally? Does he need to play with kids that are younger than him? Now, the whole playing up and down, especially in soccer, I got a whole another beef about that. Maybe I'll create a whole other speech about that. But we got to look at their player development first and remove that gender aspect, because already what's being put on this boy, if he overhears this, if he gets any wind of the fact that coaches are talking about him as like, you're not physically ready, what does that do to his self-esteem? What does that do to his idea of him as an athlete? He might be one of the most talented athletes in 5 years, but he's just not there yet. He needs time. Everybody grows differently. Everybody develops differently. And we've got to give the kids the ability to find their place. And then this I didn't do that. This last one, now you got to see the little trick. This last one is, what is this kid's gender? What team do they belong on? Now we're getting into something that's a little bit more tricky, right? That people really get kind of flustered about. A kid who identifies as non-binary shows up to a club. This is happening more and more, and it is not a fad. It is not going to go away, and it is up to us to be ready to have a place for kids who are non-binary, to feel safe, to feel like they can excel. And so if we've got a kid who shows up and says, my gender is non-binary, I don't identify as a girl, I don't identify as a boy. Well, if we only have gendered teams and we're only assessing based on skill, based on gendered assumptions, yeah, that kid's not going to have a team to play on. So we've got to open up the door. Again, I want to go back to saying I'm not opposed to gendered teams, but we have to have more than just two. We've got to have more options because there's more options of kids out there and youth sports and youth athletes out there that need that option. Okay, now the next step is just ask why. Ask lots of questions in your industry, amongst your colleagues. Question these norms. Question the things like, why are there only two genders listed? Maybe that's only two genders listed in registration. Maybe that's only two genders that are being talked about within this curriculum that you're using. Who wrote the curriculum? Is the curriculum written only by men? Is it only based on this ideas of masculinity? Who wrote that curriculum? Why are we using it? And who is it leaving out? We have to ask these questions, right? We have to push back against these norms. And if you start to do that more often within yourself, the things that you're using within your own industry and with your colleagues, doors will start to open up, new ideas will be created. When I created PCFC and we started having kids come in and we weren't finding ways to make these gendered teams, just purely based on the fact we didn't have enough kids at a certain age, I didn't go to the default of, well, we don't have enough girls, I guess we can't have a girls team. Or we don't have enough boys, guess we can't have a boys team at 10 years old. Instead, I said, what are the skill levels that we have? Can we put them together? Can we create safety and inclusion around those kids? Because I questioned why. Why are we only assuming that there can be only two teams or two genders? And then the last thing that I'm going to wrap it up with is this other binary. Underneath the little Zoom thing, it says estrogen versus testosterone. This is the other binary. And this is the thing that gets pushed back against what I'm talking about the most. But Cage, we're talking about girls and we're talking about boys, and you cannot have girls and boys play together because boys are stronger, faster, and we created girls teams, and Title IX, which is turning 50 this year, was created to give girls an opportunity and an ability to play and compete. Totally agree. It is great that we have the ability for women and girls to compete and find their place in sport that works for them. I am not in disagreement with that. What I think, though, is that we're missing a really good opportunity to look at the fact that hormones are not the end all be all of where players should land. And there's an assumption that this person is a testosterone bodied person that automatically assumes they're going to be faster, stronger, and have an advantage over an estrogen bodied person. Now, I am standing here in front of you to tell you, yes, testosterone, very powerful hormone. I physically watched my body change over the course of 2 years, drastically. My jaw squared, the muscles in my shoulders changed. I can build muscle just by thinking about it practically. Whereas before, when I was, not having all this testosterone coursing through my body, I had to lift weights like a maniac, which I loved. So I am not trying to stand up here and say, ignore the science. The science is real. But the problem is that we're just looking at those facts, and we're not taking into account all of the other factors about athletes. The different developmental phases that athletes go through, puberty, how players develop, what is the kind of coaching they're getting, what is the environment they're in. All of these factors impact how athletes develop. It's not just hormones. It's not just the testosterone. It's not just the estrogen. But we have been sort of stuck in this binary way of thinking for so long, and we're so afraid, we as a society, we're so afraid that girls are going to get hurt. Why? It's just assuming that girls are weak and can't handle it. We're just presupposing those ideas over and over again when we're just saying girls can't handle it, boys are going to have more. This is the crux of the issue with transgender inclusion in sports right now. And it is complicated and it is complex, and it gets more complicated and more complex the higher up you go in participation, professional, Olympic, all of those things. But at a younger stage, at this youth athletic stage, we can have a blend of kids playing together. I've been watching it for nearly a decade, and I've been watching it happen successfully, and I'm watching our girls say, oh, I can definitely do this. I can definitely go and beat that boy. And they don't get to just stand there and watch and think, I think I could. They get to go and do it. They get to go and experience it. And here's the other beautiful thing that happens. The boys in our club, they are coming to me and saying, I didn't know girls could be so good at soccer. I had no idea girls were this strong. And I was like, why not? I don't know. I've never played against them before. I just thought I'd heard them. When you put athletes in a real-time scenario of getting to play against each other, they get to recognize, and coaches get to recognize, these binary ideas, this binary system, these binary ideas of estrogen and testosterone, they are not the end-all be-all. They are not written in stone. They are not the only thing that we can focus on. We can do better. We can expand our minds. We can push back against the systems that are embedded into our athletic world. And I hope that from what I've stood up here and said today, and what I know some of these other sessions that are talking about for the rest of this week, I hope it'll help to continue to push our industry of coaching into a new realm and a new way of thinking, so that we can truly start including all of the people that deserve to be playing the sport that they love, and making our way towards play equity, and hopefully one day play liberation. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. I've got my mic back on. Yeah, do you want to do that? Okay. Question? Yes. This is my favorite part. This presentation part is okay, but I like this part. We'll just leave those two up there, by the way. That's just a good image to just keep looking at.
Thank you for that talk. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I really like the approach in the inclusion for both boys and girls. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the difference in the experience of the kids in your training sessions or in your club, and if and when they compete outside the club,
Great
and
question.
what kind of experiences they have with that.
Yeah, great question. So because of the nature of sports being gendered, we only play against boys teams. There aren't co-ed leagues out there. Every once in a while, we'll play against some other teams that have a few girls on them, because we are also playing often against other Latino culture teams. And there's a little bit of a standard of girls in the Latino culture playing on the boys teams, because there's often not enough girls to make a girls team. Not always, but just saying that happens. So for the most part though, we're playing against all boys teams. And there hasn't been any issues. There hasn't been any injuries. There hasn't been any problems. And if really what's happened is that and these are like middle school age kids primarily that this happens to, the boys on the other team will say something stupid to our girls, right? Say some sexist comment. And our boys will step in and say, don't say that about my teammate. They have bonded as teammates, not as I'm protecting you as a girl, but you don't say that about my teammate. It's really incredible. And like I said, it only is happening because we're allowing it to happen. We're giving the kids the chance to be in that space together. We're not policing it. We're not making it anything that it doesn't need to be. We're just allowing the kids to learn from one another and grow together. And even at the high school level, we haven't played high competitive level with girls and boys mixed, but high enough where some people would be really concerned about injury. It's been fine. The girls are fine. But back to my point, we're also not putting players of any gender on a team that they're not ready for. So if, we're putting players in a place that's ready for their physicality. If we're not going to just because we've got a high school team and we've got a high school girl, if she's not ready for that level of play, we're not going to put you there. Just the same as we wouldn't put a boy onto a team because he's 15 and that's the team he's supposed to be on if he's not athletically ready. He also can get hurt. Boys can get hurt. It's true. So I hope that answers that question a little bit. Yeah. That's all. No, definitely not my decision. That's how it goes in youth athletics, is that there's, only gendered teams within a league. And the rules are that if you have even one girl on a boys team, they have to play on the boys team. And never would you ever find even one boy playing on a girls team playing against girls. This is the problem, right? This is the entire problem why I'm here talking about it. Yes, other questions?
Thank you very much for sharing your personal story and for the presentation.
Thank you.
A question that I wanted to ask, what about the community? And what about the parents, the families of these kids, and the approach your club is taking with having the mixed gender teams and everything? And considering that you said some are immigrants, some come from Latino backgrounds, and there's a machismo culture there. So how is that?
It's interesting. There's been no pushback. And I think part of it is, the access that we're giving to the kids, and the fact that the families are recognizing that we're not a recreational club, we're not a kick around club, we're a competitive club. And we're giving their kids from, a community that is often left out of the system an opportunity to play. And that's what's paramount. And we communicate, hey, here's how our teams are structured. Here's how we have our teams set up. And we're in close proximity and close communication with all of our families. We're a small club. We're 130 players at the moment. And we're in close communication with all those families so that if an issue comes up, we discuss it. We have a communication about it, similar to this giant rainbow flag on our sleeves. This is a part of all of our uniforms. We had to have a conversation about that. Not necessarily because of issues that players or families were having within our club. Everyone's really supportive of me as a trans person and of us as being an open club. But what happens when kids from other teams start calling our kids, gay and all these things? And so we had to address that ahead of time, similar to talking about here's why we have girls and boys playing together. And I also have a staff member who's our family services manager, a Latino woman named Carolina. And she just comes flying out of the gate and is like, we accept everybody here. And parents were pushing back against us having purple and pink jerseys because they were like, my son's not going to wear a purple jersey. And she said, that's ridiculous. Why not? And she just she's in that community, right? It's me, different than me as a white person saying, come on, you got to fall in line with us. She's like, this is who we are. We're doing something different. We're standing up for our kids. We're inclusive. We got to be inclusive to everybody. And I think that's mitigated it, right? We're just upfront about these things. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, the Zoom folks need to be able to hear. All right, that's setting up for disaster.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for especially the gender binary slide, because when I played soccer, I had really short hair and they would call me a boy because you couldn't wear earrings. So I definitely related to that. But sort of building off of that, like you're in a community where they're really accepting of this and open to it.
Yeah.
And it's really great that you're doing the club within that community. But if we're trying to think about how to get into other areas and do this with other clubs, like we would practice with the boys, but no way would the parents be open to us combining. Like, how are we making headway when we know like the gender binary is systemic and just, I know it's a very difficult thing to enter into, but how would you do it in other clubs or communities?
It is really difficult, and it's so community specific, depending on the relationships and just what's happening in that community. The first place I like to start with especially if you're talking about soccer, is just to have kids playing together more often. Maybe not just that. I think you referenced like, yeah, every once in a while we'll play against the boys, but instead of it being like, okay, it's the girls versus boys game, let's have a mixed scrimmage. Let's mix everybody together, split everybody up. We're all going to play on different teams together, boys and girls mixed together. And so then it's not this head-to-head competition, but now it's teammates, and now it's learning with each other and getting to really work together. And I think if that's done enough, it's not going to happen after one time, but I think if it's done enough times, it's like a real-time experience where parents can watch and be like, oh, I guess there's not that much to worry about here. It's just all these assumptions that are being made before being able to actually see it in real life. And so I like to use the game to bring those things forth. And then if it's possible to have conversations, to have a dialogue, either it's coaches having a dialogue with families or, families and kids. And I always approach everything with lots of questions. So instead of coming at it of like, oh, I know you're going to be resistant to us blending boys and girls together. Instead, maybe it's a question of, what are you worried about? What are you afraid of? And let's talk through those fears. Let's talk through what might be an issue that could come up, and let's see if we can mitigate them. And just to start there. So it's not rocket science, but it's pushing back against things that make people uncomfortable. Yes, Kristen, hustle, Kara.
Well, you just brought up a little bit about your coaches, and I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how you work with your coaches. Maybe I'm making an assumption here that some of the families and kids that might gravitate to your program might have, there might be a reason they're coming for a lot of different reasons. And so how are your coaches prepared, or what do you do with that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's to be totally transparent. We're still working on it. We're still working on our coaching education, which is why any of you out there that want to talk to me about coaching education, Zach, we're basically doing it on the field. So one of the things that's really first and foremost important about the coaches we bring in is that we bring in coaches who know the game. So they're not just well-meaning volunteer parents, right? So they know the game, they've played the game, and then they're coming in. They're also finding us because they're attracted to our mission. They're attracted to the fact that we have gender inclusive teams. And so they're already coming in with a mindset that's open. And I think that's a really big difference for us, is that I think the message, it's the same message I gave to the person who just asked that, same message I give to what you just said. It's about putting that message out front that this is who we are. It's not buried in an anti-discrimination clause. It's not buried in some club policy. It's at the top of all of our web pages. We are an open LGBTQ club. We have gender inclusive teams on all of our team pages. We are showing pictures of boys and girls playing together. And so if you just are putting that out there as this is the foundation of our culture, then the people who are attracted to that and are open to it and are going to learn more about it are going to come to you. And the people who are like, whoa, not for me, they're probably not going to come to you. And so I think that's the first and foremost thing, is to just be on the cutting edge of it and be really open to it. But then once the coaches are in and we're talking about coach training, we're not doing anything specific around this is how you have to coach boys and girls when they're playing together. We're just training our coaches to be coaches. We're coaching athletes. And sure, we're looking at different skill levels and different development levels, and we're not ignoring the fact that we have girls and boys playing together, but we're still just training our coaches to be coaches in the game of soccer.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I know we're kind of running right up onto the end of your
Yeah.
time. So I wanted to thank you for coming and sharing
Thank
with
you.
us and speaking. I know I speak for myself and maybe many in the room that it's such an important conversation and we really enjoy it. And for any of you get a chance, definitely have a conversation. Maybe we've only spoken with 2 or 3 times on Zoom so far, but always come away from it with a really powerful sense of more things I want to ask and more places I want to do things and talk about things to help support what you're doing.
Great.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
And for those of you who are in attendance, so we've got about a 15-minute break, and then there will be a critical conversation opportunity